I don't know about in your yard, but last weekend there was still over a foot of snowpack in mine, and now there's grass. In 1 week, our region has transformed, and it's easier to believe that spring equinox will be here next weekend. A few days ago, I went out to look around the yard and say hello to some of my plants who I hadn't seen since the first week of December. I discovered that hungry deer had helped me aerate and prune back my tulip and daffodil bulbs, but I'm sure there'll be plenty popping up in a few weeks. The garden beds are visible, and based on the success of my dog's enthusiastic digging, the soil is loose enough to plant peas, which I plan to do soon. This winter had the longest snow coverage I've seen since moving to the hills of Montgomery more than about a decade ago. In many ways, snow can make the winter easier. There's more light, with bright and sunny fields reflecting the sun off the snow. Also, as things reemerge from being covered, I'm surprised and delighted to find all the projects I never finished last fall. As the snow has melted, I've gotten back into the woods near my house with the dog this week, and I've been thinking a lot about my son, Sam. When I hear the Green Man story, when I heard it in the past, I always pictured Sam in that role. He had an intermittently huge and bushy beard, though it had been more trim in the year before he passed. He was part Viking, so he was tall and had this beautiful, long curly hair that we were all very jealous of. He worked in kitchens, so it was usually pulled back and under a bandana, and that's how he wore it hiking as well. Often on his days off from work, he would load up a backpack with electrolyte water and snacks and head out to the woods to walk and wander all day long. He communed with nature. He watched for deer and other critters, and he would pause and write down notes about songs he was working on in his head, and then keep going. I wasn't the only person who connected Sam with the Green Man. So he had several symbols of the Green Man in his life, including a ring from his sister, which she now wears, and a number of books. Now, Sam was not a gardener or a farmer. I think he preferred the wild places better. So I never got him over to help me plant the way I had hoped to. But as I spend time this summer working the dirt and set out into the woods more than I have been able to in a while, I expect that I'll feel him on the wind and in the sunshine, and definitely in the woods. There are many stories about the Green Man in English folklore. The first story we heard today from Sophia Lyon-Foss is one I've shared before. In that version, being the Green Man is a job. It's a role that's held by a number of people over time. The job includes the process of reconnecting with the woods and coming into a role of caring for them. If you remember, a child sees the former squire in his new role and asks, "Are you the Green Man?" And he replies, "I guess I am." And when he sees the need for another entitled royal to learn this important lesson, he passes on the job and returns to his former life. In modern paganism, stories of the Green Man often cast him as more of a magical creature in the woods, a spirit, as in the poem we heard from Joanne Kavanagh. He runs through the forest, breathing life into all that he can, whispering to the trees. He's known as the Green Man. The Green Man is associated in folklore with a wild man covered with leaves, who was also part of pageants and processions. And scholars and folklorists and modern pagans are not all in agreement about how it's all connected, and that's okay. Acknowledging that, stories of a wild man living in harmony with the woods, singing out to plants and animals to help give them what they need to grow, a protector for the web of life, is needed now as much as ever. While we will probably not abandon our lives to live off the land, we can also learn something from the stories of the Green Man. Last year on Equinox, I shared one of my favorite poems from the Persian Sufi mystic and poet Mahmoud Shabistari, who wrote his most famous work, famous even in his lifetime, which doesn't always happen, Gulshan-i-Raz, the mystic rose garden, in the early 1300s. He came to mysticism after the invasion of his homeland, Tabriz, Iran, by the Mongols, and a period of great upheaval. He was part of a broader movement toward mysticism and sought refuge. Behold how this drop of seawater has taken so many forms and names. It has existed as mist, cloud, rain, dew, and mud, then plant, animal, and people. And yet, it was a drop of water from which these things appeared. Even so, this universe of reason, soul, heavens, and bodies was but a drop of water in its beginning and ending. When a wave strikes it, the world vanishes, and when the appointed time comes to heaven and stars, their being is lost in not being. This poem calls to the cycle of life and death and what persists. This universe of reason, soul, heavens, and bodies was but a drop of water in its beginning and ending. Winter is a time of rest for plants and animals, and often people. The land collects water that will feed next year's growth and replenishes nutrients as last season's plants break down. In the spring, those nutrients feed first spring ephemerals and buds, and then a riot of colorful leaves and flowers. The bugs emerge, and birds return from far away. The mammals who had powered down for winter come out to nibble on new growth, including my bulbs. This is a time honoring the balance of light, of rebirth, and connection to the cycles of our earth. As we come to the equinox, I invite you to take some deep breaths and connect with your senses. Spend some time checking in with your body. We can thank our bodies for imperfectly carrying us through this imperfect world. We might feel in our breath places where our bodies feel out of balance, places where we are holding worry and pain. Breathe. And as you move through this week, breathe in the smell of spring and rebirth, and see what you can identify and notice. Listen for all of the creatures scurrying and calling outside. Feel the warming sun on your face. Look for green shoots and water. Breathe. There are people with power over others, acting in the world, causing immense harm and violence to vulnerable people. Our own worries may be close to home and may be around the world or the country. This is a time of rebirths and new beginnings, and while it doesn't solve suffering, grief, or violence, connecting with our good green earth can help us remain grounded and able to respond with compassion and care. We might also hope that those who abuse power over others and the earth might be changed by their experience and perhaps nudged in that direction by the hand or the spirit of the Green Man. So may it be, and amen.